Voice of sharing, DurianASEAN.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives from Southeast Asia.
Many people are unaware that human trafficking in Southeast Asia is a grave concern, to the extent that countries like Malaysia and Thailand has moved down to the lowest grade in the US human trafficking report, where they are placed currently at tier 3. And with the recent issue of the boat people crisis, to add upon it the discovery of mass graves in both the border of Malaysia and Thailand, has added up to the extent and severity of human trafficking in this region. Most that have been trafficked are surprisingly not just economic migrants from Bangladesh, but also political refugees from Rohingya. As we all know, Rohingya is one of the most persecuted minorities in the world. Currently, they are living in concentration camps in the region of Rakhine State, but many of them had fled either via sea or land towards countries like Malaysia and Thailand, and many of them often unfortunately ended up in places like the human trafficking camps, where they found many bodies, for example, in the side of Malaysia, 140 mass graves sites were being found, as well as many more human trafficking cages surrounded by barbed wire in the middle of the jungle in Malaysia, as well as in Thailand. Many have been blaming the authorities for closing one eye or being unaware of this grave situation happening under their nose. But at the same time, pressure from international community has been mounting up. The human trafficking report by the US have placed Malaysia and Thailand at the bottom rung of among all countries at tier 3, where Malaysia and Thailand has been failing in addressing human trafficking crisis in this region. With the influx of political refugees from Rohingya and the inability of Myanmar to address its own racism and persecution towards the Rohingya, human trafficking business seems to grow larger and larger. The mass graves and the boat people crisis is just most probably the tip of the iceberg of what is happening right now in Southeast Asia. Right now, we have Phil Robertson. He is the Deputy Director of the Asia Division for Human Rights Watch, and he has been an expert and worked throughout Asia, especially in Southeast Asia, North Korea, and Japan. Prior to joining Human Rights Watch in 2009, he worked for more than a decade in Southeast Asia on human rights, labor rights, protection of migrant workers, and counter-human trafficking efforts with a variety of non-governmental organizations, international and regional trade union federations, and UN agencies. As Program Manager of the UN Interagency Project on Human Trafficking, he oversaw the successful negotiation of the first regional intergovernmental agreement on human trafficking in the Greater Mekong sub-region. Prior to that, he led the Mainland Southeast Asia office of the AFL-CIO Solidarity Center, working on trade union rights, democratic political reforms, and rights of migrant workers, focusing primarily on Burma, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, and Thailand. At 1997, he graduated from Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, and he is fluent both in Thai and Lao. and he will be with us later on to share his view on this particular issue. Especially the issue is something that has not been addressed thoroughly by the authorities in both Malaysia and Thailand. Furthermore, ASEAN has taken a backseat in not taking a proactive initiative to address the issue, which has led to a huge political and economic cost. We will be speaking to Phil Robertson, Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
From Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene and you're listening to DurianASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. Today we are going to discuss about a grave issue that is plaguing Southeast Asia, and we are talking about the issue of human trafficking, where they found the mass graves of refugees and economic migrants in the border of Malaysia and Thailand. Of course, also the recent issue of the boat people, majority of them were Rohingyas, refugees coming into the shores of Malaysia, Thailand and Indonesia. With me now is Phil Robertson. He is the Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch, and today he's going to share with us the dark side of human trafficking in Southeast Asia, as well as just enlighten us on what's happening right now on the border between Malaysia and Thailand. So first of all, welcome and thank you for coming and share with us your view regarding on this particular issue.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, perhaps you can also share with us your organization, Human Rights Watch. I believe you are the Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch for the Asia Division. And what's your role in this particular region?
Well, I'm based in Bangkok, and I oversee about 8 or 10 different countries. Our work in those places, most of ASEAN, also Korean Peninsula, Japan. Anything to do actually with ASEAN, the organization, also is something I take care of. I've been living in Southeast Asia about 20 years, most of that time in Thailand. And right now I'm very involved in a lot of the work that's being done on migration, refugees, and human trafficking. You know, obviously we have this latest group of Rohingya coming from Burma, along with some Bangladeshis, but also we've been working on issues of human trafficking, for instance, that people end up getting put on fishing boats and things like that.
And regarding on the situation that is happening on the border between Malaysia and Thailand, is an issue that has shocked not just Malaysians and Thais, but also the whole world, that this camp that looks like a Nazi camp that has been left abandoned in the border between Malaysia and Thailand. Can you describe to us, like, perhaps what are the horrific situation that has took place at that particular campsites and the mass graves that has been laid off there?
Sure. These mass graves and these camps are essentially part of a network, a trafficking network that has been operating for a number of years. And what has been happening is people are brought by boat from either southern Bangladesh or from Arakan State in western Burma. They are brought into Thailand, brought overland to Thailand, and then held in jungle camps. And the reason they're being held in those jungle camps is to extract ransom money from them for release and for sending them on to Malaysia. Usually these ransoms are, you know, in the order of $3,000. So it's a significant amount of money for a very poor Rohingya or Bangladeshi who is coming through these camps. And if they cannot pay, they are physically abused. In some cases, the women are sexually assaulted. We have cases where people reported that their relative was being beaten as they were listening on the phone, because these people who are controlling the camps will force these people to take a phone and call all their friends and relatives and tell them to transfer money into a specific bank account. And if they don't do it, then they'll beat them with iron rods, sticks. People will have cigarettes put out on their skin. And we also have cases where women were sexually abused and raped.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like it's an open secret that none of the authorities from each of the countries that are involved know about this. In fact, in Malaysia, for example, the locals have had sightings of Rohingyas and Bangladeshi for some of them for years, but no action has been taken. Why it is an open secret?
Well, this was like a buffet feast of corruption for officials both in Thailand and in Malaysia. I think that there are not just local officials, but maybe regional and senior national level officials that may be involved as well. Certainly that's the case in Thailand. But the problem is that very little is going on beyond a sort of investigation of local officials. The reason that this was all taking place with such impunity was precisely because it was protected, because people were getting money to look the other way and to allow these practices to continue. Mm-hmm. There's no way that, for instance, you could have 28 trafficking camps and 139 grave sites in a small state like Perlis, and people would not know what is going on. Mm-hmm. So far, what we've seen is the IGP blaming the forestry department, saying the forestry department must have known what was going on. But I hope that he will recognize he has to expand the investigation far beyond that. He needs to be looking at immigration officials. He needs to be looking at police officials. He probably also needs to be looking at army officials, because these are border areas where military units are placed in order to ensure national security. And if they don't do that, then it's an indication that there were some very senior people whose involvement cannot be revealed.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the intelligence information has came too late. Do you think that the authorities in Malaysia and Thailand, they are not equipped to handle the extent of the human trafficking networks that is happening in this particular region?
Well, I think that they are not trying that hard, to be honest. I think that many cases the officials are in on the trade. That was certainly the case here with this Rohingya on both sides of the border. That there was official connivance, there was corruption, there were people who were either actively involved or paid to look the other way. And so, the issue of the capacity of the governments, they love to raise this issue. They say, we don't have the technical resources, we don't have the people, we don't know how to do these things. But the issue is, are they actually trying? Do they have the political commitment to go down, to investigate, and to prosecute whoever they find involved, no matter how high-ranking that person may be or how influential they are?
Mm-hmm. Malaysia has gone to Tier 3, and I think with this particular case, it will probably go down the drain even further. I just want to know, when it comes to countries like Malaysia and Thailand, how much that they could have done, actually, and how corrupted the officials are, if you want to give an extent of the situation.
Well, I think that both Thailand and Malaysia have been placed in Tier 3 by the U.S. government in their anti-trafficking report last year, and that it was a good decision, that both of these governments really need to have a wake-up call. They needed to recognize that people knew that there were serious problems and that they had to address these. I'm hoping that that political commitment will continue to try to solve the problem, even though I think that they haven't done enough for the U.S. to upgrade them to what would be called a Tier 2 watch list or to Tier 2. So the governments need to recognize that there are political costs for failing to act on these issues. We're looking at a major expose that has come up in the last 3 weeks, simply because the Thais went in and exposed one of these camps. It was an investigation where they went to the camp. I don't think they were expecting to find bodies. All of a sudden, they did find one man barely living, another dead body, and quite a few graves. They started investigating, and the whole thing became very big very fast. And Malaysia, I think, probably has known about these camps for quite some time, but Malaysia was being more cagey about it. They went up the mountain on May 11th and didn't tell people what they're doing, and investigate everything from May 11th to May 23rd before they finally made an announcement that they had found some graves. And I'm wondering whether we've seen all the campsites found yet or not. I think that we probably have not.
Apparently, according to reports, it's 140 mass graves that they have uncovered. But do you think it's much more severe than that?
Well, I'm thinking that it's certainly on the Malaysia side, they've discovered 140 mass graves. They haven't figured out who's in those graves or how many people are there. In Thailand, they've only found 7 sites with 33 bodies, and we think that there are certainly many more jungle encampments where people were being held and abused in Thailand. I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of this. I think that in both cases, the governments recognize that the more they find, the more it makes them look bad, and so they're trying to, in some ways, be seen as doing their job while at the same time not finding too much.
We will take a break. When we return, we will come back to this particular topic on human trafficking.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene, and you're listening to DurianASEAN. And of course, with me is Phil Robertson. He's from the Human Rights Watch. And of course, talking about the human trafficking, how far extent the network is in this region?
Well, I think that trafficking is a major problem throughout the region. It's connected to the fact that you have so much migration and you have such poor efforts by the governments to effectively protect migrants and to monitor the way they're moving. Let's look at Malaysia. Malaysia, has perhaps, as many as 3 to 4 million migrant workers. And similarly, Thailand has about the same number. Most of these people are undocumented. They're in the underground economy. They're easily exploited by influential persons. They can be quite easily victimized, often extorted by government officials. All that kind of vulnerability makes it very difficult for them when they move from one place to another to be sure that they may not be taken advantage of. They might not be forced into some sort of arrangement of forced labor where, they're not able to escape from that area.
And for the human traffickers, who they are exactly?
Well, I think that they're common criminals, but they're also people who have connections. If you're going to operate a camp on a border, and if you're going to bring, hundreds, if not thousands of people across a border, you better be a well-backed up businessman or government official. You better have a lot of clout behind you, because what's going to happen is, as people realize what you're doing, they're going to demand bribes, and that's what we saw in Thailand. All the various different government agencies who saw Rohingya passing through their areas were all demanding bribes in order to look the other way. And this is one of the reasons we saw, for instance, the ransoms for people being charged in the neighborhood of $3,000, because these traffickers needed to have a significant amount of money to actually pay off all these corrupt officials who are demanding money.
And why is such a lucrative business? Because each of these, I would say, migrants, they have a cost that is quite expensive, and people are ready to buy them, as if they are a commodity. Why is that so? What is happening right now when it comes to economic of refugees and migrants?
Well, what you have is you have a regular migration in this fashion because government-to-government channels for migration don't work. Let's look at the case of Bangladeshi migrants. You already have a significant number of Bangladeshis who are in Malaysia, who have come through this government-to-government channel set up between people in Bangladesh and the Ministry of Home Affairs in Malaysia. So why are Bangladeshis coming on these boats? Well, it's partly because there's so much corruption in these government-to-government arrangements. First of all, in Bangladesh, you have people who are charging incredibly high amounts to process a person to receive some sort of work visa in Malaysia. They, have to pay for the passports and other things. But I mean, the amount of money they can pay, can be, thousands of dollars. And then when they arrive in Malaysia, they're essentially controlled by a single employer. They're not able to change employers. They're exploited. They are not paid the minimum wage. They're not, provided with any sort of access to their rights. So they're easily exploited. They have to pay a lot of money to move. So, they're sort of like, okay, well, maybe I can try on this boat. It might be cheaper, it might be faster than going through these government-to-government systems where, in some cases, they pay all the money and then they don't get the visa, and all of a sudden, they've mortgaged their house, they've mortgaged their land, and they have no recourse because they essentially have been cheated.
And this has been happening for decades, I suppose, not just a recent event.
It's been happening for decades. But what we've seen with the Rohingya, these trafficking routes that have come up through Thailand across the border have really been since about circa 2005 or 2006.
So when it comes to economic migrants from Bangladesh, let's focus on Bangladesh. Some of them claim that they were kidnapped to Thailand and Malaysia. Why there's somehow a forced human trafficking, kidnapping of involvement in it? Is it because the demand is too high that they actually need to kidnap individuals for it, or is that another form of business, not just labor, but perhaps selling of human organs, I suppose?
It's not that complicated, actually. What is happening in both Bangladesh and parts of Arakan state in Burma is that because the traffickers can make so much money by bringing people on these boats, they're in turn paying people on shore to find people to come on the boats, and they'll pay them per head. We had heard that the cost may be as much as $100 per head to find someone and you bring them to the boat. So what you have is armed vigilantes and gangs, in some cases Rakhine, trying to track down Rohingya youth, catch them, and then sell them to the boat for $100 a head. That is a very profitable enterprise. You use a little bit of force, you get rid of a Rohingya, which was what the Rakhine want, and you get a lot of money. $100 in Arakan state is a significant amount of cash, and people are making a lot of money, performing these, really sort of. Well, it's ethnic cleansing, but it's at a more personal level. It's basically tearing a youth away from his or her family and handing them over to people who are going to likely torture and abuse them, because part of the reason their families have not authorized them to go in the first place is the families don't have the money to pay the ransoms once these people land in camps in Thailand.
I see. Let's focus on the elephant of the room right now, which is the influx of political refugees and economic migrants to the shores of Malaysia, Thailand, and to some extent Indonesia. And because of that, I think the business of human trafficking has become more and more, more extensive and lucrative. Why there seemed to be a passive reaction from the authorities until the issue of the mass graves and the boat people suddenly just burst out. Then they became shocked that this is happening, like as if it's something new. Why is that reaction from the authorities?
I think the authorities were really pressured by the international media on this. Once the graves came out, it became exposed that you had these mass graves on the border. The international media moved very quickly to report on the story, and it became a major media issue. Then the BBC and the New York Times and Agence France Presse rented a boat, and they went out and found one of these boats that was essentially floating crammed with people in very poor conditions, essentially starving, and filmed it all. And so again, you had a tremendous amount of international media attention, and that in turn sparked pressure on the authorities of Malaysia, Thailand, and in Indonesia to deal with these boats, but then also to look at this larger issue of human trafficking. I think that Malaysia recognized that once Thailand started uncovering these graves on the Thailand side, the Malaysian government knew that the question was going to come to them. You've got all these trafficking camps with these graves in Thailand. How could you not have something like that in Malaysia? So the Malaysian authorities got ahead of the media curve. They basically went out and did their investigations, and then they made a big announcement. But if left to their own devices, these different governments probably wouldn't have been picking this up at all. They are essentially responding to international pressure, which shows that pressure works, and that it's important to continue to hold these governments' feet to the fire and demand that they actually do what they say they're going to do, which is to protect trafficking victims, protect refugees, and show some sympathy to the Rohingya.
We'll be taking one short break. When we return, I'll be playing you one short clip by PBS NewsHour on human trafficking camps and mass graves discovered in Malaysia.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
From Southeast Asia.
But it's quite sad that the fact that we have to rely on international pressure for the governments in ASEAN to do something or to be on their toes, rather than having them to do what's right for Southeast Asia, especially when they are trying to push the idea of ASEAN community to Southeast Asia.
Well, this is once again an indication of where ASEAN fails as a regional organization. This is a regional crisis. It requires a regional response, but where is ASEAN? ASEAN can't do anything because Burma would object to discussing the Rohingya. ASEAN needs to actually evaluate itself. It has to really sort of have a very important time to think through what it's going to try to do as a regional organization. If you continue to have archaic rules that allow for one government to object and stop everything from happening at ASEAN, ASEAN is going to become more and more irrelevant. The problem is that ASEAN is operating on the basis of rules adopted in 1967, when many of these countries were at loggerheads or contending with each other. In some cases, you had recent spouts of violence between them. For instance, like the confrontasi between Indonesia and Malaysia. That world has really changed in a very significant way. We don't see those kinds of threats to peace anymore. So the idea that somehow one government should be able to block discussion of any issue at ASEAN should be changed. It just makes no sense anymore, and it creates a situation where ASEAN as a regional organization becomes irrelevant. Look, tomorrow we're having a conference here in Thailand that is chaired by the Thais. Much of the ASEAN will be there, but there's nobody from ASEAN because ASEAN itself cannot discuss the issue of the Rohingya.
Can you share with us what's the conference about?
Well, the conference is going to be to try to find some sort of solutions to this boat crisis and what is known as irregular marine movements within the Indian Ocean. We expect that there's going to be a discussion about how to change the rights abusing policies of Burma that target the Rohingya and cause them to want to flee, but also an effort to try to ensure that the three frontline states, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, don't push people back, that they do effective search and rescue operations, and that they allow the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, to have unhindered access to do refugee status determination, to essentially figure out who these people are that have landed on the shores, and ensure that those people who should be considered as refugees are treated as refugees, and those people who are economic migrants are economic migrants, and that there's a real clear standards-based determination by a credible, impartial organization with a mandate to do so, UNHCR or for Trafficking, IOM, to really get to the bottom of this and say who these people are.
If ASEAN continue to stick its heads under the ground, what is the cost for them? What is the cost for ASEAN as a regional organization?
Well, the cost is twofold. First of all, the cost is that they get bypassed on major decisions like this one, where what's going to happen in this conference is not going to involve ASEAN at all. And two, they become considered essentially an ineffectual laughing stock. That this is an organization that talks big but can't deliver anything because it can't manage its members. I mean, the problem is ASEAN not even the equal to its parts. It's less than the sum of its parts. And ASEAN as a regional organization is supposed to be more than the sum of its parts.
And for some of the leaders that people used to look up to, I think I'm referring to Aung San Suu Kyi, has she seen as a failed leader as well in taking up the issue of the Rohingya especially?
Well, certainly she has failed to raise the issue of the Rohingya. That's a problem. In fact, the Dalai Lama just called her out on that and said, as a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, you should be talking about the situation of the Rohingya. So far, she's been completely silent on this, and it's shameful. It shows a lack of principle. It shows a triumph of politics over a belief in human rights, and she deserves every piece of criticism that she's getting from the international community at this time. But that said, let's be clear, she is also the leader of a political party that is in the opposition, that has 7% of the seats in a national parliament, and she's not the one who's driving the policy against the Rohingya. It is the Burmese government and the military that are doing that.
But talking about the lack of principles, it seems like it cut across almost all of Southeast Asia. Even if you look at leaders in Southeast Asia, even including Jokowi, there seem to be silence on issues regarding human trafficking, on boat people, on political refugees, and even to a certain extent on economic migrants as well. They refuse to talk about this and or see this as a critical issue that will affect Southeast Asia or ASEAN organization as a whole.
Well, I think that the Rohingya is a test case for ASEAN. I mean, what you clearly have is a boat people crisis, where ASEAN should be figuring out a way to work through these issues and actually find a way to respond with one voice. But they can't do that because of Burma. I mean, it's even been raised. I mean, the Rohingya issue was even raised in the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, where there was an effort ICHR. When there was an effort when Brunei was chair of ICHR to have a retreat where just the commissioners would speak and all the staff and other people would be escorted out of the room and allow for a frank dialogue, and Burma vetoed that. They said that we don't want to talk about the Rohingya here. So even the one organization that's clearly entrusted with the human rights mandate by ASEAN can't even discuss this.
So I guess at the end of the day, what do you think Malaysia, Thailand, and especially Malaysia being the chairman of ASEAN Summit for this year, do you think there are steps that they need to do in order for them to at least be seen as being serious on issue regarding on the Rohingya?
Well, I think that Malaysia can do a couple things. First of all, they need to act through example by receiving these people, by allowing UNHCR to have access to them so that UNHCR can figure who they are and ensure that they receive protection. And right now Malaysia is not allowing UNHCR to go in to see these people who have landed on shore. They should be working with other partners to pressure Burma to change its policy, because it is the rights-abusing, discriminatory policies of Burma towards the Rohingya that are the source problem here, that are the real reason that the Rohingya are fleeing. Mm-hmm. And I think Malaysia needs to seriously table a proposal to revise the rules of ASEAN and do away with this principle of consensus, where one country can veto or prevent any discussion from taking place on a subject that government finds sensitive.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean, they're gagging they're essentially gagging themselves. I don't know why they would think that would be important to do so, but they're gagging themselves by maintaining this archaic law or regulation that should be done away with.
Mm-hmm. And for Human Rights Watch, what is your focus right now in this particular area? What do you hope that you'll be able to add in or contribute in order to pressure countries within Southeast Asia to take this seriously?
Well, we're going to continue to work very strongly with governments that agree with our point of view on issues connected to the Rohingya. So working with the U.S., working with the European Union, working with others who have decided that this is a priority that they need to work on. I think that we need to continue to work with the media and educate them further and ensure that their reporting reflects the reality of the abuse that the Rohingya are facing. We need to focus more attention on Burma's failures, not only in terms of a rights-abusing policy towards the Rohingya, but also their failures to prevent human traffickers from preying on people in Arakan state, and for essentially hijacking people onto these boats, to force them to go to Malaysia and then ransom them like they were something to be bought and sold.
Mm-hmm. With that, thank you very much, Phil Robertson.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for calling.
Voice of sharing, DurianASEAN.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
From Southeast Asia.